AirBnB, a name synonymous with adventure, comfort, and affordability. But sometimes these havens of convenience hold secrets far more sinister than their cheery photos and glowing reviews suggest. Tonight, I bring you 3 stories of horrifying stays, each more unsettling than the last. These are not just tales of messy accommodations or overly chatty hosts. No. These stories venture into the realm of the truly terrifying. And tonight, you step into the shadowy world of Mr. Scary Guy. Prepare yourself for a journey beyond the ordinary, into the shadows of your deepest fears. Welcome to the world of Mr. Scary Guy. I had been drowning in deadlines for months, so when I saw an idyllic little cabin advertised as the Forest Retreat, I didn't think twice about booking it. The pictures were stunning, an A-frame nestled in a forest of evergreens, complete with a stone fireplace and a wraparound porch. Perfect isolation. When I arrived, the cabin looked just like the photos. The key was waiting in a lockbox as promised, and inside, everything was immaculate. Daniel, the host, had left a bottle of wine and a handwritten note welcoming me. The place exuded charm, but even as I unpacked, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was slightly off. The air felt heavy, like the cabin was holding its breath. That night, I settled by the fire with a glass of wine. The glow of the flames flickered off the wooden walls, and for the first time in ages, I felt at peace. But as I got ready for bed, I noticed something peculiar. One of the doors at the end of the hall wouldn't open. The knob turned slightly but stopped as though it were stuck. There was no lock, no visible obstruction, just a door that refused to budge. I shrugged it off. It was probably a storage closet, maybe jammed from disuse. But later that night I woke to an odd sound. Soft creaks like footsteps crossing the wooden floors. My heart quickened. It's just the house settling, I told myself. But then, a low whisper joined the creaks, faint but undeniable. I sat up, straining to hear. The whispers were too soft to make out, but they seemed to come from the locked room. My pulse raced as I debated whether to investigate or stay put. Finally, I convinced myself it was just my imagination and pulled the covers over my head, willing myself to sleep. The next morning, sunlight streaming through the windows dispelled most of my fears. I even laughed at how jittery I'd been. But when I texted Daniel about the door, his reply was unsettling.
That room stays locked. Please don't try to open it.
His vague answer made me uneasy. Was there something inside he didn't want me to see? That night, I couldn't shake my curiosity. I stood outside the door listening intently. Nothing. Feeling foolish, I jiggled the knob again. It still wouldn't open. Frustrated, I returned to bed, only to be woken again by the sound of footsteps. This time, the steps were louder, heavier. They stopped right outside my bedroom door. My chest tightened as I stared at the door, expecting it to burst open at any moment. But the sound faded, replaced by an eerie silence. Morning came and I resolved to cut my trip short, but when I went to the front door, it wouldn't open. The deadbolt refused to turn, and no amount of force could budge it. I tried the windows, locked tight. Panic bubbled in my chest. I was trapped. Desperate, I called Daniel, but my phone wouldn't connect. Even the weather app refused to load. It was as though the cabin existed in its own little bubble, cut off from the outside world. That night, the footsteps returned. This time, they didn't stop at my door. Instead, they moved to the locked room. I heard the door creak open, followed by a soft, rhythmic thumping. Mustering all my courage, I grabbed a flashlight and crept down the hall. The door to the room was ajar. Inside, the faint beam of my flashlight illuminated a chair facing the corner. The sight chilled me to the core. It was a child-sized rocking chair, gently swaying back and forth as if recently vacated. Before I could react, the door slammed shut, and a deafening bang echoed through the cabin. I screamed, sprinting back to my room and barricading the door. The whispers began again, louder now, almost taunting. They continued until dawn. When morning came, the front door was unlocked as if nothing had happened. I bolted to my car and sped away, leaving my belongings behind. Later, Daniel messaged me.
You weren't supposed to open the door.
I've stayed in countless Airbnbs. Most blend together, clean, quiet, and forgettable. But the Victorian house I rented last month left a mark on me I'll never forget. The photos online were stunning. The house had high ceilings, intricate woodwork, and a wraparound porch that overlooked a lush garden. It was located on the outskirts of a small, quaint town. I thought it would be the perfect place to relax after long meetings. The reviews were all glowing, and the host, Eleanor, responded quickly to my booking request. When I arrived, the house seemed even grander in person. Eleanor met me at the door. She was an older woman, short and thin, with piercing blue eyes that seemed to take me apart piece by piece. Her demeanor was polite but curt, and something about her gaze made me uneasy.
Enjoy your stay,
she said, handing me a brass key. Then, as I was turning to leave, she added,
one more thing. Don't leave after dark.
I chuckled nervously, expecting her to laugh, but her expression stayed dead serious. Why not? I asked, my hand still on the doorframe. Her lips tightened.
Just don't.
The cryptic warning sent a shiver down my spine, but I shrugged it off. The first night passed uneventfully. I unpacked, worked late on my laptop, and settled into bed by midnight. The mattress was comfortable, and the quiet surroundings lulled me into a deep sleep. The second night, things took a turn. It started around 9 p.m., just as I was wrapping up an email. The lights flickered once, twice, then went out completely, plunging the house into darkness. I grabbed my phone to call Eleanor, but the signal was gone. Even the Wi-Fi had disappeared. I told myself it was just a power outage. I used my phone's flashlight to navigate to the front door, intending to leave and find a hotel in town. But when I opened the door, I was greeted by something I can't fully explain. Complete, impenetrable darkness. No streetlights, no moon, no stars, just an endless void stretching in every direction. I waved my flashlight around, but its beam was swallowed by the blackness. The garden I'd admired earlier was gone, replaced by this strange, consuming absence. My stomach twisted with fear as I closed the door and locked it. I ran to the windows, hoping for some sign of life outside, but they all showed the same endless void. It was as though the house had been plucked from reality and dropped into nothingness. Hours passed in silence. I sat on the couch, gripping my flashlight like a lifeline. Around midnight, the quiet was broken by footsteps overhead. Slow, deliberate, and unnervingly heavy. My heart pounded as the steps moved from one end of the second floor to the other. I gathered my courage and climbed the creaky stairs, my flashlight trembling in my hand. The footsteps stopped as I reached the top landing. I checked each room, but they were all empty. My pulse was racing as I turned to leave, and that's when I saw it. In the hallway mirror, there was a figure standing behind me. It was tall and featureless, a silhouette darker than the void outside, its head tilted as though studying me. I spun around, but the hallway was empty. When I looked back at the mirror, the figure was gone. I ran back downstairs, locking myself in the living room. I piled furniture against the doors and windows, hoping to create some barrier between myself and whatever was in the house. My phone's battery was draining fast, and I knew I couldn't call for help. The footsteps returned. This time, they didn't stay on the second floor. They descended the stairs slowly, each creak of the wood sending shivers down my spine. I pressed myself against the couch, flashlight pointed at the door, but it didn't open. Instead, the footsteps stopped just on the other side. I don't know how I managed to sleep that night, but when I woke, sunlight was pouring through the windows. The void was gone, replaced by the picturesque garden. My relief was short-lived when I found a note slipped under the door.
It doesn't let everyone leave. You were lucky.
After my wife's death, I needed to get away. The grief was suffocating, and my home felt like a mausoleum. A quiet Airbnb in the countryside seemed like the perfect escape. The listing described it as a converted barn surrounded by rolling hills. No neighbors, no noise, just peace. When I arrived, the place was even more idyllic than I'd imagined. The barn was rustic but cozy, with exposed wooden beams and large windows that framed the endless fields. Olivia, the host, left a brief note.
Feel free to explore, but avoid the storage room.
Her instructions struck me as odd, but I didn't think much of it at the time. That first night I explored the property. The barn was filled with charming antiques and cozy furniture. But there was one thing that made my skin crawl: a photo on the mantel. It was a black and white portrait of a man who looked eerily like me. Same square jaw, same dark hair. At first I thought it was a coincidence, but the resemblance was unsettling. The next day, the strangeness continued. I found books on the shelf with my name scrawled inside the covers, old clothes in the closet that matched my size, even a wallet tucked away in a drawer with my initials engraved on it. It was as if the barn had been prepared specifically for me. I messaged Olivia, but she insisted no one had lived there in years. "The house is yours for the week," she wrote. "Make yourself at home." That night I was woken by a sound I can only describe as a deep, resonant hum. It seemed to vibrate through the walls, low and rhythmic, almost like chanting. When I stepped into the hallway, the storage room door was ajar. A faint light spilled out, flickering like a dying candle. Inside there was only a mirror, tall and ornate, with a tarnished silver frame. But what I saw in the reflection wasn't my own face. It was me, but older, gaunt, with hollow eyes that seemed to scream silently. The figure in the mirror raised a hand and pointed directly at me. Panic surged through me as I slammed the door shut and stumbled back to my room. The next morning, the mirror was gone and the storage room was locked again. I packed my bags, determined to leave, but as I started my car, Olivia sent a final message.
It knew you would come. Be careful on your way out.
The barn still haunts my dreams. I see my older self trapped in the mirror, waiting for someone else to find him. 3 homes, 3 nightmares. Next time you book an Airbnb, remember, no matter how perfect it looks online, you never know what secrets it might hold. This is Mr. Scary Guy saying, good night, sleep tight, if you dare. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe by clicking the icon above. We've also got a playlist full of scary stories on your left side, and a suggested video you'll love on the right. Choose one and keep the scares going.